method for it, the basic use for it in the kitchen. All right? So let's start over here with something that we've seen before.
Did I review it?
We might be familiar with. And I said might be. And that's the idea, is to review, so that you become familiar with them. All right? So let's go with, I guess we can leave that open. Let's start off with this one.
Shoulder clod?
This is a beef shoulder clod. What does that tell you? What would you do with it?
Moist cooking, slow.
Beef shoulder clod, primarily moist cook, slow cook. Maybe you could isolate this one section. This little part is called the top blade. All right. And what would you do with the top blade?
Roast. Yeah.
Not roast.
Dry.
It's got a big collagen band that runs through. That's like the bottom of my shoe.
Stewing.
Unless you like to eat roast shoe, I would suggest don't roast it. I would divide it and turn it into what steak?
Flatiron.
It's called the Flatiron steak. Exactly. So the beef top blade could be turned into the Flatiron, but the rest of it is pretty much braised. Actually, this one also has this piece, which was not on the shoulder clods that we broke down. This is a special little cut right in there. What would that be? Anybody remember the components of the shoulder clod? You had the heart of the clod, you had the top blade, and then you had this one little muscle.
Teres major?
And that's called the teres major. Right. And how would you cook that? I would cook that like a steak as well. You can buy this as a separate item. But in general, if I looked at this on the ID test and I said, beef shoulder clod, woo, braised. Simple, right? Beef shoulder clod braised. This one is USDA choice, and it's also certified Angus beef. What does that mean?
To pass the criteria for the company fabricating it.
Right. So it passed the criteria for certified Angus. So what is the criteria for certified Angus?
I think for that particular brand, don't they have to have some genealogical?
Yeah, it has to be
fallback to the Angus.
some genotype. In other words, it has to be related to Angus.
Choice or prime.
It has to be choice or prime.
So it doesn't look like Angus.
And it has to look like Angus phenotype. But what level of choice? Choice is a big category.
All levels.
Huh?
No, yeah, I think they do all
For
that.
the Black Angus, it's all levels, but they have
No, it's not all levels.
No?
There's small, modest, and moderate. So it has to be modest or higher. Modest or higher, which is only about 12%, well, about 15% of choice is going to be that higher end choice. So it's picking the top edge of the choice category. And not only that, it has to have medium or fine marbling texture. Is that important? Yes. So it's got fine fiber, a higher end of choice. Would you pay more for it? Yes. Yeah. It's a program that has some teeth to it, at least. Some of them are, if it's all of choice, then why not just buy choice? You know what I mean? So what? You're related to an Angus. There's other good beef breeds out there. But Angus tends to be a little bit higher quality, and this guarantees a higher quality. And you can see the nice marbling in it, too. All right, so that's certified Angus beef on that one. Next up, we have this. What's this item?
Brisket.
That's a beef brisket. What gave it away for you? Did you know it was a brisket?
Yeah.
Did you, Caitlin? No? So what are you going to pick out? How are you going to know that's a brisket from this day on? I could have you hold it all day. That would do it. By the end, you'd be like, I hate you, brisket. I look at it and I go, there's a nose. Brisket always has a nose. All right, it always has this curve to it. It's got these flat fiber lines, and then you flip it over, it's got fat on this side. So brisket's shaped like that, brisket. I don't know how to tell you how to remember them. You know what I mean? I try to do them blindfolded. Up to that point, but that's besides the point. What's this? Beef tenderloin Pismo. 4 letters, P-S-M-O. And what do those letters stand for? Anybody know?
Peeled side. Muscle
Peeled
on.
side
Muscle
muscle on.
on.
The side muscle is the chain that runs along the edge. What's your identifying features for the tenderloin Pismo?
It's long thin. It's got that side muscle on it, and it still has the fat on the
Yeah,
top.
it's got a little bit of membrane on the outside. I flip it over and I see
Yeah,
those
the ribbing
little
on it.
those little marks there where it was attached to the chine bone, the feather bone, finger bone, right? It's got a tail to it, like a big fish. Tenderloin. All right. What would you do with it?
Slice it into steaks, medallions.
Steaks,
roast
medallions, maybe roast. What would you do with a brisket?
it, Slow cook it.
Slow cook, right? Barbecue, slow cook. Next up,
It's a blood.
this is the beef top sirloin butt, and what gives it away is you can see that there's two sections to it. This is the cap, and then that's the main section that was like the baseball. And if you flip it over, a lot of times there's bone connective tissue on the bottom side where it was attached to the hip bone. All right, there's bone connective tissue. All right, so pick out things that you can identify that say top sirloin butt. Okay, was this one in the bag for a while?
Yeah.
Lots of purge. Old. Not rotten, but old. Top sirloin butt, what would you do with it?
Break it into
What did we do with it?
broke it into a roast, and then
You can make roast. You can make steak. Steak, 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 steak. It's a good steak. Excellent. Next up, beef short ribs. Oh, look at them. Nice and flat, large. Typically they would be busted into portion-sized pieces. What would you do with short ribs?
braised.
Braised. I just had that for lunch. I came in and they had a cold beef short ribs sitting on top of polenta with little julienne carrots and green beans and peas, and I ate the whole thing. The little toasted onions that they didn't do right. They were like shoelaces in there. Instead of being a crisp, they were still like moist but burnt-ish. Tasty, but not the way they just left them off. Sorry. Alright. But this was cooked really nice. Low and slow. All the fat was cooked out of them. They were good. Alright, this one. What's that? I'll give you a hint. It's from there.
Oh, it's the blade stick.
It's the beef top blade. And what's its other name? What steak can you make it into?
Flatiron.
Flatiron. So you could call it both of those things. Beef top blade or beef flatiron. In its whole form, I would say braised. If you split it and cut it, then it becomes the flatiron steak. And it's a good steak. Tasty. Got it?
Cheap.
Got it? What's your identifying feature on this one?
Shape.
The shape, that rectangular shape. And then this stuff. What's this stuff on the outside?
Bone connective.
Bone connective, right? So it sat on the top blade bone, and then they peeled it away, so it's got all that bone connective tissue. All right, tough like a shoe. Next up, what's this? There's more than one. I put away the single one that you had out here, and I brought out these. This is how they're sold. There's more than one in there. There's 6 in there. That's beef flank steaks. They're flat, and they got this obvious straight chain line, this fiber line that runs north to south on them. When you cook them, you got to make sure you're cutting them across that grain to break that muscle fiber. You see the lines? Flank steak. Flank steaks are flat. Flank steaks are flat. They're large, flat steaks. I don't know if that helps. These steaks are flat. Next up, oh, this thing isn't even in a bag. What a cross contamination we got going on here. Look at this dry age maniac. What do we have here? That's the beef export rib. Beef export, meaning the exterior of it. You can see the curved rib bone. All right. It's too wet in there. You see how this is still wet? Instead of being dry aged, it's like, ew, rotting a little bit. That's not good. I complained to Ralph. I said, stop spraying a hose in there. Who cares if you clean the chicken rack or not? Seriously. Beef export rib. What gives it away? The curvature of the rib bones, the fact that it doesn't have a big cap, the chine bone is removed, the feather bones are removed. So there's your beef export dry aging. All right? Good. What would you do with that?
Cut it into steaks.
Yeah, you could roast it or you could cut it into steaks. High-end, high-quality ribeye steaks, right?
So for a lot of money.
Good steaks? Yeah, yes. All right, next up, it's Buddy. It's neighbor. Just down the block. What's that one?
Strip loin.
Bone-in beef strip loin. How do you know they're not the same thing? They look sort of the same. Look, the eye muscle, what? Same cut.
Distinctly different shape.
Well, this one's always more rectangular, and the bones on here are flat. Those are the finger bones. This is where the tenderloin sat in here, right? So when we scooped out the tenderloin, that's the strip loin. It had a tenderloin, you stripped it away, strip loin. Hooray. And what would you do with a bone-in strip loin? Steaks. Yeah, especially dry aged like this, I would say shell steak or strip loin steak. All right, you got to give me the bone in too. All right, don't just say strip loin. You got to say bone in strip loin. If you say export, you're all set with that because a bone in ribeye is an export. But if you don't remember export and you remember ribeye, you could say bone in ribeye, and that would be fine as well. So bone in ribeye, bone in strip loin. All right. What's the NAMP number for this? Oh, that's another story. We're not going through that one. What's this? Bacon! Woohoo! That's all one big piece. So it's called what?
Slab bacon.
Slab bacon. All right, that would be an identifying feature. If you forgot slab, you would get half off. Oh, look at it. It stands up. Why? Because they sell sliced bacon and they sell slab bacon. Why would you want it in its whole slab?
You can control the cut.
Huh?
You can control the cut.
You can control the cut. I go to Peter Luger's just across the Williamsburg Bridge, which I think is now open. Wow, you can get across there from Manhattan. And they sell you a nice big slabby chunk of bacon grilled for an appetizer. It's like, what? And they have these funky little pretzel rolls with salt on them. You eat like 40 of those and a big slab of that, and then your steak comes and you're like ready for a nap. It's really good. Rustic, you know what I mean? But bacon. So for them, they cut it themselves, thick slice. For you, you might want it paper thin, where you're doing a real thin crisp and you're crumbling it, putting it over a salad like a wafer of bacon. You know what I mean? There's all different reasons to do different things. Or you might chunk it up for your render, for your lardo. All right, next. What's this? It could be Canadian bacon, or it could be considered boneless smoked pork loin. Canadian bacon or boneless smoked pork loin. All right, one or the other. It's fine. Identifying feature? I don't know. Looks like Canadian bacon. That's an easy one. It's smoked. You got the nice amber color on the outside. It's got that pinkish hue because it's been cured. Other cured stuff. This is a prosciutto di Parma. You see right there is the Parma crown that's emblazoned on it. And then underneath that is a number, and that tells you which factory it came from. But it's got that Parma crown. Without that Parma crown, it's not a true Parma. All right? It has to be from the Parma region. This is packed in salt, and then they stack them up on boards, one on top of one another, like really high, as tall as me. And that's what presses them down into that shape. And then they switch them around. They put the ones that are on the top, on the bottom,